Hello, church. Very nice to see all of you. I wonder, are there prayer books in the pew? Yes, good. Okay, because I'm gonna, hello, Robert, how are you? It's nice to see you. I don't want to suggest something that isn't possible, but because there are prayer books in the pew, it is possible. I know that we are not all here in person. Some of us are on Zoom, and we want to say, where's the camera? Here's the camera. Hello to all of our friends who've joined us on Zoom. I thought we'd start with prayer, recognizing that those of us on Zoom may not yet have prayer books in front of us, but those of us here do. So if you don't have a prayer book, just allow us to help you pray. So I invite you to turn in your prayer books to page 836. And when you find it, if you look up, then I know that you've found it. This particular prayer is unique to our prayer book. No other prayer book in the Anglican Communion has this prayer. It was written by a scholar at Drew Divinity School in response to the death of his triplet children who were run over by a car by a neighbor. And so I tell you that context because it's an important part of our tradition, and many communities and groups and churches use it. And whether they know that piece of history or not, I think it is particularly fitting anytime, but especially when we come to a time as we are tonight with some anxiety and some concern and a great deal of uncertainty. And so I'm going to invite us to say this aloud, and then I'm going to say a few words about tonight's meeting and a word of encouragement, not only for tonight's meeting, but for the days ahead. Is that okay? So let's say this, a general thanksgiving together.
Accept, O Lord, our thanks and praise for all that you have done for us. We thank you for the splendor of the whole creation, for the beauty of this world, for the wonder of life, and for the mystery of love. We thank you for the blessing of family and friends, and for the loving care that surrounds us on every side. We thank you for setting us at tasks which demand our best efforts, and for leading us to accomplishments which satisfy and delight us. We thank you also for those disappointments and failures that lead us to acknowledge our dependence on you alone. Above all, we thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ, for the truth of his word and the example of his life, for his steadfast obedience, by which he overcame temptation, for his dying, through which he overcame death, and for his rising to life again, in which we are raised to the life of your kingdom. Grant us the gift of your Spirit, that we may know Christ and make him known, and through him, at all times and in all places, may give thanks to you all things. Amen.
If you're one of those persons who has to say the grace at Thanksgiving Day table and you don't know what to do, you might want to use this. Thank you for coming out tonight, and thank you especially for allowing Michael and me to be with you. I met with Melissa last month via Zoom, and I said, why don't you invite me to come? And she said, okay. So I'm really grateful to your senior warden, to your vestry, to your prior vestries. I'm grateful to your rector, and I'm grateful to all of you who are here and all of you who are on Zoom, and the number of people perhaps who are not able to be with us. Our primary purpose is to listen to each other. Michael is going to say some words, and he's going to facilitate and lead our time together. Before I turn things over to him, it's important for all of you who are not on the vestry to know that Michael and I just had a lovely supper with the vestry downstairs and clarified in very plain terms why it is we're here. And the first thing I want to say is that I, in a symbolic way, represent the care and the concern and the prayers of every single other Episcopal faith community in this state. Which is to say that on Sunday mornings, most of our churches pray for a cycle of prayer, and we name that church. In most of our churches, you are in that prayer list every Sunday. Because we care. We care about a chapter of your life that you've never known before. We have never been here before, and we will never be here again. So the first and primary statement that I want to make to you is that Michael and I come to you in a spirit of solidarity, representing the love and concern of a big community, and a word of grace that we all say together from our Lord Jesus Christ, who promises to give us peace that passes our understanding. Thank you for being here tonight. A couple of words about process, and for those of us on Zoom, we need for you to either use the raise hand function or to raise your hand this way, and then one of us will call on you, but we might need help from you all to make sure that Michael knows that. And because we want our friends on Zoom to hear us, we're going to ask people to come and use the microphone. Is that right, Robert? Someone? Oh, so there's a lollipop, and someone will pass the lollipop around. And if you raise your hand, I think that's enough for me. Thank you, Canon Ambler. As I said when we got downstairs, I brought the smart one with me.
That's a terrible setup. Thank you all for being here tonight, for inviting Bishop Brown and me to be here tonight. For those of you I haven't met yet, I've met most of you before, but I'm Michael Ambler. I'm Canon to the Ordinary, which means that I'm a deputy to the bishop. And one of the things that I do is to help congregations find new clergy. That's how I first came into contact with so many of you when the search was on that ultimately led to Brent. And I also come and help when things are complicated and difficult. And I know that that is true here at St. Francis now for reasons that are nobody's fault, but are nonetheless true. We did have a really wonderful meeting with the vestry downstairs. First of all, we came through a rainy, cold, miserable night to a kitchen full of warm meatballs and fresh bread and cheese that you have to speak foreign languages to pronounce. So thank you for the hospitality. And we realized as we talked that there were different preconceptions about what we were here to do tonight. But two primary questions emerged. The two questions are we alone? And when is this, meaning this period of uncertainty with Brent, with his ability to be here, to lead and so forth, when is this going to end? And one of the things that we said is that the vestry is a really important body in answering those questions. So a couple of things that I want to say, and then it's going to mostly be a chance for us to listen to all of you. Are we alone? The bishop's already talked about how you are really not alone at all. Jesus is with you. The love and the care of the diocese is with you. And we incarnately as people will be with you as much as you want and need us to be, as much as we possibly can be. But you are surrounded by a cloud of witnesses and of love, and you're not doing this all by yourself. And in fact, one thing that I said downstairs and want to say again, I know these are really difficult days at St. Francis. I don't in any way want to minimize that, but you guys, I mean that collectively, y'all are burning so bright right now. The whole diocese is aware of the grace that you are showing to your rector as he heals and recovers, God willing, and also of the grace that he is showing you, because when I met with him, you know, I was here to preach and preside of what, 8 weeks ago? I met him afterwards. And he wanted to tell me how he was doing, but he mostly wanted to hear how you were doing because his concern for you is as great as his concern for himself. So you're not alone because everybody's on the same side of this question. Everybody's trying to figure out what's best for St. Francis, what's best for Brent, and those are not oppositional questions. Those questions are cutting in the same direction because everybody is looking for what is best for this community. The second question, when is this going to end? Honestly, nobody knows, but you're not powerless in making that decision, nor is Brent. And so that's part of what we're here to talk about tonight is how are you doing? How are you feeling? And part of who'll be listening to that answer, in addition to God, is your vestry. Because whenever anybody speaks on behalf of St. Francis, the vestry is the group who does that. So let them know your hopes, your concerns, your dreams, your joys, all of that. And let us know that too tonight. So let me stop talking and start listening. And is there anything that we should say about the mechanics of how we are going to do this? I'm just advised that Zoom is unable to unmute. And so the folks who are on Zoom, we really do want to hear from you, but we're going to have to hear from you in written words. So the people on Zoom who want to be heard, please use the chat function to express yourself. Please also know this is not a one-off tonight. Members of the vestry are here to talk to you. If you're on Zoom and you feel like you have things that you want to say that the chat function is not going to let you say, call up a member of the vestry and talk to them so that they know. And I think that's the best we can do for right now. But Melissa or anybody, do you want to say anything about the mechanics or like how people can get hold of the lollipop that will allow them to speak? One thing that I'm going to ask. Oh, perfect. As we begin talking, what I want to invite you to reflect on is how are you doing? What does St. Francis need? What do you need? What can you celebrate? And what I hope we won't do is to conduct a 75-person performance review of the rector, because that would be an evil thing to do. So if you are inclined to do that, please restrain yourself. That really would not be helpful, appropriate, or fair, or any of those things that we all strive to be. But
they're not in a majority.
Nobody ever wants to be first. Thank you for going first.
Yeah.
So my name is Marty Hamblin, for those of you who don't know me.
This could really shake what is possible, the window of possible
My
there.
name is Marty Hamblin, for those of you who don't know me.
The news, the fast,
In a perfect world, I would of course love Brent to come back. In an alternate universe that's also perfect, and we couldn't have Brent, I'd like to have a clone of Brent. I need continuity, and what Brent, what I feel he's done for St. Francis was really energize the congregation, energize the community, bring new people in, embrace our children, get them coming in and whatnot, and that's what we need. However we can get it, that's what I feel that we need. St. Francis right now is doing a wonderful job with outreach and getting out into the community. We need to keep that energy going, but it's hard to do when there's not, in my mind anyway, the continuity and the spiritual leadership. So that's what I have to say, really. And
first and foremost, I'm Sarah Everdell. And first and foremost, I want to thank Melissa and the vestry for doing an extraordinary job in terms of providing the leadership that we've needed in the last year. Melissa especially deserves all sorts of accolades, and heaven's not going to be good enough for her. As head of outreach, one of the things to sort of tie on with what Marty said, outreach is doing an extraordinary job because of the people in this church. We've just connected with Simmering Pot, and we're providing specialty soups for them. We've just connected in the last 6 months. We've connected with the Community Compass. There was an 18-year-old girl who was homeless, immediately thrown out of her house because of domestic abuse. Outreach stepped right in on that, got the kid clothes. Somebody from the outreach gave her cash. Somebody else got a gift certificate. And I've just learned that she is now on a scholarship at Eastern Maine Community College, doing well and getting counseling. We're part of that. We're part now of working with Sedgwick schools on developing a backpack program. That's ongoing. So there are a lot of good things that are happening here. Kate and Kathy DeSilvi, Kate Mulren and Kathy DeSilvi are running a adult forum, which is really, really exceptional. Yes, we need leadership. There's no question about that. And yes, it would be nice. But I feel that Brent is an extraordinary human being, an extraordinary person. And that if I am supposed to be and I'm new to being an Episcopalian, you all need to know that. But if I am an Episcopalian, if I'm supposed to be an Episcopalian, I would like to provide the love and patience that I'm required to provide in a very, very difficult situation. And that's what I want to say.
Thank you, Sarah.
Mary Hartley. I'm speaking, I think, as one of the oldest people here, I mean, age-wise, but also from 1988, when I first joined St. Francis. And I just want to mention to you that we have been through all kinds of valleys. We have been in the desert for, I think, years sometimes. We've had a great deal of difficulty, but we've always seen it through. There's never been a moment, well, yeah, there were a couple, when things were not that great. I mean, we had some times when the congregation was split, and we actually received an admonition from Bishop Shilton at that time, who said, you will not search, and you will not search until you get yourselves together. And it took us over a year. A number of you probably remember that. It was a great time of healing for us. And we ended up with a wonderful priest, but we continued. And we've done this over and over again. So I say to you that it's not in our character not to see it through. That's what makes us St. Francis. And that's what makes us come here. It's not just the priest is very important, but it's the feeling that we have when we walk into this building, when we work together, and when we pray together. So I think we can do this.
Thank you.
Nancy Pierce. I want to back up Sarah. Love. When I came to this church a few years ago, the love and the respect that you all had from one another made me know this is where I want to be. And we have to keep that love. We have to respect one another and move forward together.
Thank you.
Hi, Sydney Peck. I've been a member here, and then I left, and then I came back, and I'm so glad I came back. I feel kind of out of place saying anything because I am new to being back here. I've only been back for like maybe a year or so. But what I noticed when I came back was that there was a consistency of people that had been here before. And I thought that was really important. But there are also a lot of new faces that I have come to know and appreciate. And in terms of Brent, a little bit I can understand in some ways what he's going through, because without getting too much about my personal life, but there was a period before I was diagnosed a few years back with stage 3 cancer. But everyone said, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. You're healthy. You're, this and that. And they said, oh, your labs look great. And I kept hearing this from doctor after doctor after doctor. And I can only imagine with his family, what they're going through, not knowing what is going on with him. The terror of that. As strong as your faith is, until you've been up against that wall, you don't know how frightening it is. It's really frightening when you're like, well, I knew I was dying. I said, I'm dying. I can feel it. I'm dying. Something's really seriously wrong with me. So I guess what I would say is I'm advocating for patience in his healing because I think that he's doing everything that he humanly can. And, perhaps this is a test of all of our faith, of our patience, and how we can stand in the void with him. That's all I have to say.
John Paul Alon. I echo a lot of what I hear today. I guess my concern is, in a lot of worlds, and I think we're trying to do this, the best way to bring someone back is to get them back on a part-time basis, and we're trying to build that. It's not happening, and so would it be better for the parish to just relieve Brent of that so he can full-time work on getting better, and we find some stability on an interim basis, whether that be an interim priest or like we're trying to do with Donna, have a full-time supply priest, and an occasional other supply priest. But even more than just a full-time supply priest, we need someone with that leadership. I think that's what I hear a lot from other parishioners, and would that be a better avenue for Brent to work full-time and getting better than trying to come back on a part-time basis? And we not know whether that's going to be two hours next week and 10 hours the next week and then back to 2 hours. I don't think that's the stability that would be good for us, but rather give him this amount of time that he just works on getting better, and we take care of ourselves during that time.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm Lorna Russell and I'm the organist here in Carlton. So I'm sort of going to riff off Mary Hartley. I mean, we've been involved in the church for a long time, back to the 80s in the summer and full-time for 16 years. We've worked very hard over this year with Barbara, Carlton, Barbara and I, to keep the liturgy on Sunday really going. And so if somebody walks in on a Sunday morning, they really don't know that we're in chaos. It looks pretty good through all kinds of things. We even managed to pick up on the special pattern service for Sunday, and we are ready to do that. That was a little dicey. We just got on that last week. So we're like, as Mary said, this parish has ridden through some pretty rough times. I don't really know what the answer to that, what that is for Brent. I don't know how much longer. I know that certain issues, pastoral issues, are not being addressed. We know that. And that's hard to get at. Carlton, we live a half an hour away. I mean, priests that could be doing this might be So that's a hard nut to crack. I mean, certain things are functioning. This church has a long history of functioning well without clergy because that's where it started. But we can't, I don't think we can go on forever that way. And I'm not sure emotionally how long we can go on.
Lorna, can you speak up?
I'm sure, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not sure emotionally how much longer we can be in the wrenching with Brent and praying every day for him. It's just heartbreaking. So I don't know. That's all I have to say on that.
Thank you, Lorna. And I just want to sort of underline the last thing you say, which is you don't know how long this can go on. And I think the honest to goodness truth is nobody does. And I'm so grateful that we have a chance to listen to each other because that will begin to help us know what the answer to that question might be. And I've been hearing all that everybody has said so far tonight, including you, Lorna. So thank you for that.
I was struck first by John Paul's statements and then by Lorna's, which I've just sort of it helped me understand and helped it gel a little bit. The ideas, the reality, but Lorna and Carlton, everything, I mean, here they are. I mean, just working with us every day and trying to work out, somebody called it chaos. We are a resilient parish, but there are places, things that are missing, and it's just becoming just a little more obvious to me. So John Paul coming up with some of these ideas, perhaps to particularly regear the pastoral leadership, which simply it hasn't been available to us. And we've risen to the occasion amazingly. I mean, we really have. But there's still, to me, this unknown thing, and unknowns are hard. What if we do something like John Paul is suggesting and not let Brent go, but let him heal? And have a certain amount of time in which we have viable leadership, not an interim, but somebody who's just going to be there for us. And we check in a year and develop and have the kind of counsel and kind of stuff that doesn't have, we're counseling each other right now. What it's amounting to. And I think we're pretty great at it. I mean, I wrote, in that eclair about, I've never encountered such resilience and love in the church, and that's true. But that can only go so far. It's living in the unknown, the lack of the shape of this, I guess, is what really gets me. And I just wanted to share that.
And Bob knows this, but I think everybody should emulate what Sarah did. She held the mic right to her mouth, and not only will everybody hear her that better, but certainly the people out in the Zoom world will hear it better.
Thank you, John Paul. That was our first chat question. Can they hold the mic closer? The other is from Ralph Topham. And the question is, has anyone asked Brent what he would like to do and how he sees this going for him?
I think we can speak a little bit to that, yes.
I think it's important for Michael to say a word about that because we, first of all, Melissa at least, and maybe some others of you, are in touch with Brent, but so are we. And so Michael can say a word about that.
So as I alluded to at the beginning, I am not the most up to date with Brent. Others can fill in the picture more. What I can say, though, is that when I spoke to him last, he was very much hoping that his medical condition would improve, that he would be able to come back, that you would be able to endure the uncertainty long enough for that to be possible, because he's absolutely clear that the point comes when it's too long. And he does not want you to wait too long so that the muscle fiber of the congregation begins to fail. So So he's very concerned that he not keep you waiting too long, and he's hoping that he'll be able to come back before it gets to be too long. And as we've been talking about tonight, there's no clear definition for what that is, which is why we're listening so carefully to one another. So I think the bishop can say a little bit more about where things stand as of right now.
I was with Brent via Zoom on Monday, and he gave me explicit permission to share the following. About 2 weeks ago, he was at MGH and had a procedure that for the first time since this ordeal began has given him a strong sense of hope. It's clear to the team who's caring for him that this procedure resulted not only in clarity about how they might proceed, but importantly, left Brent for the first time in months with a sense of not being in pain. Some of you have heard that they caught COVID again, and this time it was not a mild case for some of them in their household. So it's not been an easy time in the last 2 weeks, but right now there is in Brent a strong sense that has been absent until now of the possibility of recovery. The challenge for all of us, especially for Brent, is that it's not clear when recovery might happen, but at least for the first time in a year, it looks like recovery might happen.
So I think one thing that we actually can say with some confidence right now, which we couldn't say prior to right now, is that things are changing. And, you know, up until now, we could say we hope we'll know more next month, but we didn't really have any basis to think that we probably would. I think now we can say we hope we'll know more next month, and that's not just sort of, you know, that's not just hopeful. There's a solid basis for thinking that it could well be true. There are no guarantees for anything, obviously, but there's a direction now which is much more promising than it was before in terms of getting clarity without waiting indefinitely.
Hi, I'm Mary Beth Payne. I'm sorry my husband couldn't be here tonight. We're relative newbies here. We got our house in July of 21. And one of the first persons on our doorstep was Father Brent. And I find his ministry, he's an extremely gifted leader. And I think he's drawn the whole community together. I've been through some patches here visiting in the summers. My son was at music camp here, and there were rocky periods. But when I come to church here, I find that the church is the community of the faithful. And it's not just the rector, but all of us. And you all are remarkably responsive and resilient. I feel joy when I come into the building. I'm amazed every Sunday by what Lorna and Carlton are able to do with the liturgy and the whole team that serves the parish. So I think this is a wonderful place, and I personally would like to give Brent as much space as he needs to heal. I also want to say that my husband had a medical dust-up a couple weeks ago, and the number of people who reached out was really marvelous. And I want to thank you all for that, and so does Greg. But I think given all the things that are going on here, the responsiveness of people, what you've accomplished with outreach, with the choir, with the crucifer and the whole liturgical team, everything that you're doing in this parish is so positive and so fruitful that I would like to see it continue. The one thing that struck me was what John Paul said. If it would help Father Brent to say, let's get an interim for 4 months or 6 months so that you can focus on healing, it might relieve some of the pressure on him. But if that's not the case, if he just wants to be here, that's fine with me too, because I see a parish that's really flourishing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I'm hearing something clearly, and I want to see whether I'm right. Are you willing to indulge me in a little exercise? I think what I'm hearing is two things. One is that there is the love and the persistence and the resilience here to wait longer. The other is, and we've heard this in several different places, that there is a sense here of need for pastoral care, which I think we need to define a little further before we fully understand it. But that if we, the bishop's office, and the diocese as a whole, your neighbors and your friends from beyond St. Francis, were able to help with that, that might help shore up that sense of resilience and persistence and patience. Am I hearing right? Is there anybody who thinks that I'm hearing really wrong? Because if you do think so, please say so. The whole point is to hear each other clearly. Yes, please.
I think we also are hearing that there are people very concerned that this could go on and on and on. And so I think that's a third thing we need to consider.
By that, you mean that it sort of feels indefinite and like it could stay indefinite forever?
Exactly.
Hard telling, not knowing. And I think that's very true with what we're dealing with now. And I fear that we have this feeling, maybe it's hidden in all of us, that this is really going to go on and on and on. And on. A few years ago, I had a headache situation, horrible headache situation. I got up in the morning, it was with me all day, all night, went to bed, got up, the whole thing, just over and over and over again. I think I had it for 2 months. And at the end of 2 months, if I wouldn't have known that there was some kind of end to this, I would have taken a rope to the attic. I mean, I can't imagine how Brent has dealt with this now for over a year. I cannot, for the life of me, imagine how he could deal with that. But I care tremendously about this church. I'm from away, and I care about this church. I'm a relatively new Episcopalian. I was received into the church 3 years ago. I love this community. I love this church. I feel like we're really missing the consistency of someone on the altar every Sunday. I feel like the pastoral care, I think that there's a point where you want to talk to someone, you have a problem, you hurt. We just need someone. And I think that we were so lucky to have such great supply priests, but I think we really need someone. I care about Brent. I would like Brent to get better, but I also would like to take the pressure off of this church community. And that's what I want to say.
Thank you very much.
So is it possible to have an intro?
Yes, and Michael can say more about that, but I also want to make sure that there's room for folks who haven't spoken before we get into a particular specific, as much as I get the question.
Sure. So let me I'll say a quick word in answer to that question, so we don't leave it hanging. We can come back to it for more discussion later if it would be helpful. The answer is yes. The answer is also that finding that person would be difficult. There's more demand for such people than there is supply. So I don't want to be Pollyanna about how long it would take or how it would work to find somebody to do that. So we, as the bishop said, let's come back to that for more conversation afterwards, if that would be helpful, but that's at least a quick sort of executive summary answer. Other comments, thoughts, concerns?
From the chat.
Please.
From Ralph again. There is not just the spiritual aspect of this situation. Certainty and uncertainty are variable for each person. There's also the financial aspect for the church and the coming budget and pledge situation. Can we discuss this?
I hear a desire to discuss finances and sort of the business side of the congregation. And let me again answer very briefly, and we can come back to it. The question at the end was, can we discuss this? And the answer is, of course. And I hope you all will, because that's important. That's part of your responsibility to the community. It's also absolutely true that what that points to is not obvious. I mean, you know, I don't know what is going to cause this congregation to grow bigger or have more resources. Well, anyway, that's a complicated conversation, but it's one that should be happening.
I'll try to provide just a quick summary of, okay, sorry, Bob. A quick summary. This year, our stewardship campaign raised about $210,000, which is pretty average. What was not average is that only 69 people pledged. In 2021, we had 92 people. Last year, we had 84 people, and this year we have 69. So I think that we can see that there is something that is declining in some of those numbers. In 1991, when I mentioned we had 92 people, between 21 and 22, we had 16 people leave the parish that had pledged previously, but we had 8 new people join us. And that brought us back up to 84 people. So, and this year's budget is really quite, I guess the word would be, I'm not sure what the word would be. I think there's a lot of work to do with this year's budget. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody have anything to say that is sort of not of a sort that anybody has said yet? A concern that hasn't been raised, a hope that hasn't been voiced?
While you're thinking about that, Mary, I want to respond a little bit more to your question, which Michael answered beautifully. We have not heretofore considered a settled interim because as we've expressed tonight, and as you all know better than Michael and I know, there's been so much uncertainty about what the timeline will be for Brent to get the medical care that he needs, and for him and for us to have answers, that at the outset of this, to have a settled interim didn't seem to make sense because we thought it was going to be a short-lived thing. It's very clear to me in the last 3 or 4 days that your question to us needs to be put front and center, not only to you, but also to me. So I just want to amplify what you were asking to say, I think it's a really important question. I don't have an answer to it. It is not for me alone to answer, but I can hear that at this stage, 12 months into a period of uncertainty, that a more settled interim may in fact be helpful.
We need one.
And just to leapfrog on that thought, one of the things that I'm hearing is that there are 2 separate desires which might conjoin or might not. But one is to have liturgical consistency on Sunday morning, you know, to know who will be presiding when you walk through the door on Sunday morning. The other is to have somebody who can provide sort of pastoral counsel, somebody who can visit people during the week, can be on hand for the difficult conversations that are part of life. And those don't necessarily have to be the same person or in lockstep. And it might be easier to find the person who could be available for that kind of pastoral care than to find somebody who could move to Blue Hill and be here on Sunday morning. So I want to just hold open the possibility that we may be looking at one thing with several aspects or at several things, depending on what we can come up with and find. So this is the beginning of a conversation about what will be helpful to you, and we're listening hard to figure out what that will be, and then to figure out what's possible to achieve.
With regard to pastoral care, I've been hearing that now fairly often in the last couple of months. And it would be especially helpful to me if someone could articulate the needs, what the specific pastoral care needs are. I'm happy to help out here in any way that I can, but maybe you all don't know that I spend 1 or 2 days a week driving to Bar Harbor to provide pastoral care to 3 parishes in Bar Harbor.
Oh, boy.
And so if it would be helpful to make some calls, I'm happy to do it. But someone needs to tell me what the needs are. And I think there are others here in the parish who are very responsive in pastoral care that we could put together a team to do this.
Thank you.
We also have Elaine Hughes and Donna Downs, both of whom have said that they are willing to provide pastoral care on a relatively emergency basis. As one of them put it, we can't visit every lonely older person, but we can see
with
the
you when
most
your mother
critical or the most emerging chronic issues. They're happy to help us with that. So we do have.
And as one person observed earlier this evening, during a hard moment, there was an outpouring of support from the parish, and that is, you know, the lonely people are often best visited by those who actually can sit and talk a spell. So it doesn't need to be somebody with a collar to do everything, just some things.
I just want to jump in. Brent, as you know, has been suffering through this for a year. Most of you did not know that he was having any problem whatsoever until the bishop showed up for Ash Wednesday. I knew he was having problems because we worked together. But I did not know it was to the extent that it was. And the fact that he went from November to, that was March that year, without fail, being here every day, being here every Sunday, is a testament to how much he loves this congregation, how strong his faith is, and his resilience. But we do have to remember that this all began with a question to me the first time was in November, was how long do you think migraines last? So.
Wow.
So I just wanted to make an observation. I'm Heather Ford, about some of the things that I'm hearing. I'm hearing Mary Beth offer she has skills. I'm hearing other people need things. I'm hearing lots of concern. And for a while, I have wondered, even when Brent was in full swing, I know that we have the eclair to communicate. And when you have a priest, a rector, who's that central person that he can disseminate or she can disseminate what people need to and delegate that information out. And what I hear in all of our comments is that we don't have that central communication hub is really what we need, particularly now. no matter kind of what we decide to do moving forward, whether there's a rector or not, our congregation needs a central communication hub where people can put in concerns or requests or things like that, that will be looked at by people who can delegate, right? And we have a body of people in the vestry who all have their own things to do, their own jobs, their own lives, right? So I think, as a member of the vestry, I think one of our responsibilities as a vestry is to try to streamline that kind of communication so that if you have a need, or you have a skill, or you have supplies, or you have whatever, that there's one place where that information goes through so that everybody can look to that place and to know where and who to get the things they need to give or get from or to.
Thank you, Heather.
But doesn't that usually go through Barbara? I mean, Barbara's the one that, she's the hub. She's the one who gets all the calls. She gets everything. I mean, it all goes through Barbara.
It goes
Always
through
did.
me when other parties keep me informed, whether it's Brent, whether it's Melissa, whether it's the vestry. And for me, that's been a challenge for a long time, that I'm over there and isolated. I'm here every day, just about, but I'm usually the last person to find out things. So that's a huge, so when you say that, Judy does Eclair, I do the bulletin, I do Facebook, I do the Sunday thing going out in pre-Eclair. So there's a lot of communication. We used to have communication meetings monthly. We don't have those anymore. And no matter how hard Judy and I have tried to do that, there's a lot of challenges behind the scenes, and it's been incredibly frustrating. Sorry, I'm the parish secretary. Been here for 10 years.
Thank you, Barbara. And I want to just underline quickly what we all just heard. One was a call for a communication hub, and the other was sort of a cry of distress from the person who might be the communication hub. This is something that the vestry and others, I mean, I think this could be improved so that the hub that Barbara could be is better able to do the work that everybody hopes it can do, because right now it's not working properly. So that may be a small, not small, but sort of an important side note, but let's make sure we don't lose that, because part of what you're talking about is what will make this work better while we wait to see what's going to happen. And Barbara, thank you for articulating that in a way that might catch everybody's attention.
I just wanted to say that I would say, aside from probably Sarah and Prudy and Bob, because he did Melissa's role so long, and through periods of times when we had an interim priest and whatnot, most of that information comes from Melissa. You know, the trouble is, who does she go to with this versus this versus this? You know, there's times when she'll try to go to Brent with it. There's times that she'll go to, you know, Donna or Elaine or someone too. There's times she goes to the bishop with it. But there's no central person that she can go to with everything. And okay, so she goes to Eclair and it goes out in Eclair. Well, that doesn't fix it. So you know, I don't say this because, you know, she's doing too much, but I say this because it comes back to that. There's no central figure right now that we can go to on it. And the other thing I wanted that I think I've heard here that, and I'm not sure, Michael, if you, when you listed off your things, I can't remember if you listed this, but if it did, I apologize. But I sense there's a real concern that Brent gets better, comes back, and then gets worse again. So that's why I go back to, wouldn't it be better if he gets better and stays better for a while and we're more sure of that than to have the roller coaster going on?
Thank you for that. I'd like to do three things. I'd like to make sure that there is nothing that anybody has been wanting to say that really is of a different kind than we've heard so far. I don't want to leave here with something important that didn't get said. I'd like to tell you a 20-second story, and I think the bishop looks ready to lead us in song.
Well, Lorna has been pressed into service, and she enthusiastically said she would play. So at some point,
Perfect.
at some point we'll see. But
All right. So thing number one, is there something that I don't want anybody to leave here tonight and feel disappointed that you didn't say what you needed to say? Is there anything that needs still to be said?
There's just something that Kevin said that struck me was the drop in number of pledges. And one of the things where pastoral care, I think, needs work is that there are some people who have left the church and have drifted away. And I'd like to somehow reach out to them. Some of us keep in touch with them personally, but that hasn't brought them back to church. So I don't know what the answer to that is.
Thank you, Lorna.
We do have one comment on chat right now, and it echoes what several people have said. We really don't want to lose Brent. He was willing to come visit us while we were homebound, which brought hope and peace that we've been missing.
Thank you.
I don't know, I've not heard anybody mention about a search, but I just want to emphasize that in my opinion, anyway, the last thing we want right now is a search for a replacement for Brent. I think that would hurt him terribly. It would depress him that he's finished. And I don't think the parish is ready for that either. And so I just want to discourage any thought of a search. I think an interim would be very helpful to provide the steady leadership.
So here's my 20-second story. I was here with all of the clergy of the diocese on a beautiful morning in September 2001. It was September 11, 2001. I remember being here with all of the clergy of the diocese, with Bishop Knudsen, who was the bishop at the time. I remember going into a coffee shop in downtown Blue Hill, and I still remember the forearms of the person who were kneading the dough as I began to hear the story about airplanes in New York. And it slowly dawned on me that the world was changing in front of my face. And I came here, and somebody found a black and white grainy television in a storage closet someplace and set it up front. And the world really did change, and nobody had a clue what was going to come next. And as we all know, what came next was tumultuous for the entire world. I can't think of a better place to have been than St. Francis as all of that began to unfold, because this is a community of so much love and faith and patience. And I know that patience is not infinite, and it probably shouldn't be, but I'm hearing that it's not at an end yet, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for Brent's faithfulness and generosity of spirit towards you and yours to him. And I think the bishop and I are hearing really clearly what you all need so that you can stay the course a while longer. And I hope that you're hearing from us that we really love you and really care for you and want that to be actualized and not just words. And that we are with you in not knowing how this story will unfold. And so the best we can do is to continue to walk the road faithfully and to care for each other along the way and to keep talking. So thank you so much for the kindness of spirit in tonight's conversation. It didn't have to be this way, but I'm very grateful to you and to God that it was. So thank you.
let me say a word about this one. Most of you know that Michael is going to finish up his work in a formal role as a member of the diocesan staff at the end of this calendar year, which is just around the corner. What you may not know, and the rest of the diocese will soon know this in a clear way, is that Michael is not leaving Maine. He was here to preach, and he and Derby and several others have this great new call to heal the people and the land in Laos, and that I can't live without Michael. So when there are situations where his incredible gift of calm and intellect are needed, which is, pretty much every day, he has promised to me that he'll pick up the phone when I call him. And so what I want to say is not only am I going to be with you, but given the complexity of this, I can pledge to you that both of us are going to be with you in some way. So what he said is absolutely right. A lot of people love you. And tonight, what is really true is that the two of us love you. And that is not going to change. I want to say a word about the vestry, and then just to be absolutely crystal clear, if you are on the vestry, would you please stand? I suspect everybody knows who's on the vestry, but it's just important for you all to see who your vestry leaders are. Each of them is ready to hear more from each of you and others who may not be able to be here tonight. And before we sing, I would like us to thank them. And we know that they do it together. We also know that they're led by wardens. But please join me in saying thank you to these two. So let's sing number 433, and it's one that you know. And now may the peace of God, which passes all understanding, keep your hearts and minds in the knowledge and love of God and of God's Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. And the blessing of God Almighty, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit be upon you and remain with you this night and forevermore. Amen. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Thank you.